We're going to wait till all attendees come in and get lunch, and we're going to start with that. Everyone, again, should have the meeting agenda and also the Kankakee County Community Crisis Response Team document. Thanks, Chris. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We're getting yeah, you need to get rid of these things too. I'm going back
Hey,
up.
Rhonda, is there anyone else still in there? Yeah. Yeah. Jim, glad to see you here. I was hoping that you would attend. Well, I know he's been quite busy lately.
He was just saying the other day that he needs more meetings to go to.
Yeah. We're going to start when the mayor signs in. He's coming in now. Sign in and receive one more? That's it? Where's Miles? Oh, he's on his way. Okay. Is that the... Well, it's 12:06, and our meeting normally only lasts an hour. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Kankakee County NAACP Law Enforcement meeting, Wednesday, January 12th. And we're going to start with Mr. Doug Redenis with ascertaining individuals and members present.
Doug Redenis, bailiff, Kankakee Courthouse.
Russell Bailey, retired police detective, KCRO board.
Andy Baston, Lieutenant, Kankakee County Sheriff's Office.
Ken McCabe, soon be retired, Kankakee County Sheriff's Office.
Oh.
Al Swinford, Manteno Police Department.
Jackie Haas, I'm the state rep, and I'm with the Helen Wheeler Mental Health Center.
I'm Robin Passwater. I'm the chief of the Kankakee Police Department.
Joshua Sampson, Chief of Community Division with the State's Attorney's Office.
Jim Rose, State's Attorney's Office.
Bob Gessner, the county coroner.
Donna Sample.
NAACP and Crisis Response Team.
Rhonda Showers, Crisis Response Team.
Reach the Daily Journal.
Lori
Executive Board, NAACP.
Steve Hunter, County Board, NAACP. Sign in, done it?
Joey, State Senator, 40th District.
Karen Smatansky, Veterans Assistance Commission and Crisis Response Team.
Chris Curtis, Mayor Kankakee.
Theodis Pace, President of the Kankakee County Branch, NAACP.
Mike Downey, Sheriff.
I have a statement. Lieutenant Mason is not here with our minutes from November. And I just want to say that we have one Bradley police officer is dead. Another one is fighting for his life after they were shot while responding to a call regarding barking dogs. These officers put the safety and lives of others above their own, serving with courage and honor despite knowing the cost. We will never forget the sacrifice these officers made to protect the village of Bradley. We cannot forget. Tragic has struck our community. As we mourn the loss of Sergeant Rematic, 14-year veteran, her life was taken in the service to others. We want to continue to hold Sergeant Rematic and her critical wounded partner, Tyler Bailey, age 27, and their loved ones in our prayers. Officers are at work now, currently at work now. Continue this brave, courageous work to protecting the people of this county. It is in the honor of the loss of these officers, loss of the office, that we continue this body, Donna Sample and the other members of the Kankakee County Crisis Response Team to work to improve and address the issues that we have with the passing of our reform bill, reducing crime, strengthening the relationship between law enforcement and this community, and building on improving of police practices. And with this, later on, I want Donna to go over, there's some key points in this document. And as I stated earlier before the meeting with Chief Swinford and Donna, we continue to get calls from incidents such as happening out there at the Quality Inn. What's the function, comforting the issues that happen? How should this committee address that? It is all here. The goal is to diffuse tension with individuals and those involved in the crisis, and to understand the crisis better, implement solutions. Incident can include publicized arrest, a shooting, violence, crime, and sudden death or suicide, or the use of force situation that provoke tension within our community. We want to increase the community awareness and safety, protection, and response for all parties involved. Ensure a victim-centered response to violence and access to our community resources. The officers was wearing body cams. This is something that this body and our response team and our committees years ago was pressing how important it was that we should have body cams, which improve police accountability, lower reports of police misconduct. Also, cameras provide visual and audio evidence that independently verify events and activities, as we've seen and we know what happened most recently. So I challenge our response team, our continued political leaders, and our lawmakers as we can continue to try to improve and strengthen the relationship across community lines in this county. This is not a time for politics. It's in the time that I talked with Chief Swinford. I talked to Sheriff Downing, our state's attorney, Hunter, Lori Gadbois, and Donna Sample, Senator Joyce. The Senate Bill 3653 have to be revisited. And it's going to take a very progressive approach to look at some of those items that affect our community and the other 101 counties throughout this state. So with that, I just want to continue and praise the work what our committee is doing. And with that, later on, the Kankakee County response team, Al and the sheriff, we've been talking, and now that particular committee, with approval from the Kankakee County Executive Committee and our general membership, will become a subcommittee of the Kankakee County NAACP branch. So I just want to continue and praise the work of this body as we continue to try to improve our relationship and law enforcement. So if our state's attorney can deal with item A, and Donna, I'm sorry, Chief Swinford and Donna Sample would sort of deal with item A regarding our document, followed by Donna with the previous meeting and your meeting coming this week. So Al, you and Donna can sort of look at, again, how our involvement is so important with tragic incidents that's happening in our county.
Well, it's a similar conversation we had, I think, with the last incident, is what role does this team have in a incident where it doesn't involve the police actually shooting? You know, it's, in this case, the police were shot at.
Right.
I don't remember what the previous incident was, but I know we had the same conversation. Yeah, the courthouse shooting. You know, where the police aren't actually the ones initiating the shooting. I don't know that we've come to a conclusion on that. In this particular case, there was some discussion about getting involved because there was false information out there that could stir up the public.
Right.
One of the unanswered issues I think we have is what access does this group have to evidence and viewing evidence and getting information or viewing a video? And I don't know, Jimmy, you can expand on that at this point, or we just don't know at this point. I think that's going to be a key question is going forward on any incident, you know, what access do they have? If they don't have access to any information, it's going to be very difficult for them to proceed, I think. So maybe that's a topic we got to tackle here pretty quickly. Because I think they could be very useful in just quelling false information that gets out very quickly on social media. It only takes one person to post false information, it catches like fire, and all of a sudden there's this false narrative out there what even happened before anything's even investigated, even though it was blatantly obvious it was false. And I think some pretty notable people in the community were spreading it, and that's very damaging.
Right.
So I think, I don't know where that stands now. I don't see it on social media right now, but it was discussed right after it with a number of us. But the question came up of what access can they have without, you know, risking any kind of successful prosecution? And it's probably going to fall in Jim's court at some point on what they can and can't do.
Donna?
This has been a very quick runaway train that's come through Kankakee County, and this crisis response team is in its infancy in being created and designing our own purpose. We met at Life Compass, and a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of weeks before Christmas or something, and so we, at that time, were really wrapping our mind around who's going to be committed to this. Being in its infancy, we're not exactly sure who is going to be willing to commit to this. And so we have a core group that has committed to being a part of this group, and we're meeting again at Life Compass this Saturday to continue our goals for the guidelines for this group. And one of the things that we did was we just created a very short purpose statement that this group will work from. And the purpose statement is understanding the reality of an event and diffusing post-incident tension through diversity and transparency with effective communication and community awareness. So we're trying to encompass everything that's in the actual purpose to put it into a purpose statement. This is going to be what we work from. This is going to be our platform that we design our guidelines. And so on this next meeting we're going to be working on putting together a commitment agreement and what is going to be expected of this group and what it takes to be a part of it. So while we are in our initial infancy of designing the structure, we had this horrible tragedy. And it brought back my original question, who tells us when to mobilize? And so Theodis and I had that conversation very early the morning after the shooting, and Theodis is like, I get it, and this could be a subcommittee of the NAACP. I said, we need to be, as a new organization, a new group, I should say, in this community, we need to be anchored to something. And being independent in and of ourselves, we're just a group of people that, we're not hinged on anything. And so becoming a subcommittee of the NAACP, I think, is a great move to have us have that recognition as well. And then it also gives this group someone to give us guidance, because no, we don't want to interfere with any police investigations. We don't want to step into something that is not in the best interest of what's taking place. And so we have got to have, because of the fact that nobody on this group is in law enforcement, we have to rely on the guidance that we receive. So becoming a subcommittee gives us that hierarchy to work with, and we understand, we get it, and Mr. Hunter gave me a term last night that was just so befitting, truth finder. And that really ultimately is the goal of this group, is to identify the truths and to be able to articulate them with transparency and integrity to the community in hopes of diffusing some of these posts. We haven't seen those posts. So I sent an email out to the response team this morning just asking them about submitting a Freedom of Information Act to be able to see the body cam. You heard the brakes come on, because we're all like, what would be the outcome of that for this group? And if we had the post or we saw what was being said, some of us have seen a few things, but not worthy of really paying it a lot of attention. There hasn't been any protests, there hasn't been any marches, there hasn't been anything that has brought a civil unrest to this. So some posts here and there, as a team, we haven't seen them. And so we don't have that measuring stick to say enduring this video would bring such an outcome. Because we all know, and we've all shared, that would be a difficult thing for all of us to do. So we're just at that place of, what is that outcome? And we don't have those posts to measure, does this look like it's getting ready to become something? So I'm still getting the responses back from the response team on if they feel that it's something we should attempt to do. And then I've received information that it probably would not be released to us anyway, just because of the nature of this and the seriousness of the investigation, that footage would not be available to us.
Okay, so with that, the document that you have there, Donna, and others, it was voted some months, matter of fact, I think it was January of 2020, that this would be the purpose of the response team. So with your group, the framework would start here, and the other part is on page 2. It's a flip side, because initially, Jim and Bob, when this group was forming, everything was revolving around police reform of the incidents that was happening from police officers to individuals in our in communities across the nation. In this case, we have to deal with ensuring the safety of our community and also ensuring the safety of our police officers. So it's a two-way street that we have to be able to deal with, and again, to ensure that everything across the board is fairly done. And so with that, the next item, because we've already talked about and we'll address item D, so item 5, the topic of discussion centered around police reform. Again, I've talked to a number of individuals. We're going to progressively seek our 42 branches across the state to revisit House Bill, Senate Bill 3653. And I know the sheriff and I talked regarding some of the trailer bills. So either with the Sheriff Association, the Illinois Police Association, and the state's attorney, I think with that, we need to be able to figure out how can we revisit that. So can someone give an update? I know there's some trailer bills that the sheriff and I talked about. So you want to do that, Sheriff or Jim? Either one of you are. How we want.
That bill initially is that there's so many components to it.
Correct.
Right? They've just thrown everything in there. So some of the components of that Safety Act impact the prosecution of cases, and some of those components impact investigation and law enforcement. So I'm not going to speak to the most recent trailer bill. That only seems to have resolved very few issues for law enforcement and sheriff. I mean, I'm not going to speak to that. That's the law enforcement side. But I can tell you from the prosecution side, I have some grave concerns with the parts of that bill that are still in place. One of them, the most concerning to me, is that for very few offenses can someone be detained under bail reform. So after January 1st, 2023, most people after they're arrested are going to be released right back out into the community, even for violent crimes. But on the off chance that someone is able to be detained, let's say a murder, that person is able to be detained pre-trial for 90 days, and if you can't get them to trial within 90 days, they're released. The case is still pending, but they're put back out into the community. And that doesn't matter if you're a murderer, if you're a rapist, no matter what crime you committed. The reason we all want DNA in cases is because most 99.9 times out of 100, it prevents wrongful convictions. So we want to have DNA evidence. You want to have fingerprint evidence, forensic evidence. The lab, we just had a conversation with the state crime lab today. Their turnaround time right now is 4 to 5 months for DNA analysis. So do you want me to go to trial within 90 days without DNA, possibly convict the wrong person, or possibly the guilty person is acquitted because we didn't have all of our evidence, or do you want me to just release the murderer back out into the community while we wait for the state to send us the DNA evidence? And the state has done nothing to support its lab services, its forensic sciences division, to kind of beef up their ability to have quicker turnaround times. So that's crisis mode right there. As of January 1st, by April 1st, you're going to have people that are accused of the most horrific crimes in our community potentially released back out into the neighborhood under this bill. We have a 120-day speedy trial statute in Illinois. People are entitled to a speedy trial within 120 days. We're able to accommodate that. That extra 30 days actually is pretty important to us. But without the lab expanding, quicker turnaround times, we're going to be in a really bad position come next year. So that's, I think, one of the biggest concerns. Another concern I have just from the ability to gather evidence before it's destroyed. If you're providing a suspect with their cell phone at the time they're taken into custody, they get to play with their phone. They're going to be able to erase things. They're going to be able to delete things. Maybe they delete an app. And I know we can dump phones. A lot of times we can get deleted information, but sometimes you can't. There are some apps out there, messaging apps, that when it's gone, it's gone. Especially like Snapchat, very hard to get records from them. So if we're not able to access that information while it still exists on the telephone, forget it. There's more lost evidence. And when you're taking cases to trial with less evidence than you should have, DNA evidence isn't ready, that just sets everyone up for worst case scenario, wrongful convictions, but also acquittals of guilty people.
Sheriff, anything else with that addition?
Yeah, the second trailer bill
in addition to that phone call issue, kind of defined when that 3 hours starts of somebody who needs to make a phone call or get 3 phone calls, as they have put it. They did define it to at least when they are detained. So when a police officer makes an arrest and puts somebody in the back of his car, that 3 hours doesn't start till they get to a detention facility, which is good. I mean, we do that now. So that's not going to change from what we do now. Somebody walks in our jail now with a police officer, with a detective, they as soon as they get processed, which takes about a half an hour to 45 minutes, they have access to telephones, free telephones, which is what the language also says. So we're doing that now. We're one of 95 or 96 county jails. There are a couple counties in the state that do not have county jails. Lucky them. But we already do that. Some of the smaller jails may not be quite so fortunate. Some of the other jails. So everything is blanketed based on probably Chicago and Cook County, but it affects 101 other jails that, you know, may or may not be able to meet this requirement. And then the other two things that 3512, it's House Bill 3512, the trailer bill, was basically timelines of training. So there's a one part of the House bill, the original bill 3653, was regarding mandatory training for police. And just like the labs haven't made any adjustments to get evidence back sooner, the Illinois Training Board has not identified how and when this training is to take place. So they've basically moved this deadline back to July 1st. Does it help? Yeah, it helps, but it gives us 6 months basically now for the training board to tell police what training you're required to have under the original House Bill 3653. And then the other one is the decertification process. They pushed that date back too because they don't have guidelines yet for actual decertification. So as Jim said, and I said this morning at the criminal justice meeting, this thing that got passed at 4 in the morning, 20 minutes before the next session of the legislature came in, we are now continuing to fix everything that we're told them what was going to be wrong. So we'll continue to do that, and hopefully those changes will help long term. Obviously, cashless bail, we heard this morning as well at the criminal justice meeting about the money that it is costing counties, because now people don't have to pay their traffic fines. If they don't pay their traffic fines, their license is going to get suspended. Now they don't have to pay them, and their license isn't going to get suspended. Well, you know what? I'm probably not the smartest guy in this room, but if I'm not going to get punished for not paying my traffic, I'm probably not going to pay. And there's really not a darn thing anybody can do about it. So those are things that need to be worked out. We have to, you know, keep working with Senator Joyce and Representative Haas and make it so the people who are responsible for placing the burden of the expenses on our criminal justice system are the ones who should be paying for it, and not average law-abiding citizens who are just here every day. And I don't want to make this political by any stretch. I just want to do what's right. I mean, it's just you know, those people who are committing the crimes, who are backlogging our criminal justice system, should be the ones footing the bill. So,
Mr. Pate, one other component of that bill that really needs to be focused on is when someone fails to appear in court. So, Sheriff, you said it this morning. When you're trying to execute a warrant, that's one of the most dangerous interactions between police and a civilian, especially a fugitive. And you see cases all across the country. I'm not going to compromise anything locally by talking about local cases, but all across the country, you see where individuals who are wanted on warrants, it becomes a violent exchange with law enforcement. And What our state of Illinois has done is doubled that danger. Because now when someone fails to appear in court, the officer has to find them once and serve them with a petition for rule to show cause, telling them that you better show up at your next court date to address why you weren't at your last court date. So that's one interaction the police have to encounter that individual. And then when they don't show up at the second court date, then the court can issue a warrant. Now you've got to find them twice. So it makes it twice as difficult to bring fugitives into custody and really twice as dangerous for law enforcement by having to interact with that fugitive on 2 occasions where, as it exists currently, it's dangerous enough, but it's only one. So those are some things I think that really need to be looked at, just from a public safety perspective, a law enforcement safety perspective, and just the general safety of not only law enforcement and civilians, but even the defendants, quite honestly, because the more interactions you have where the danger of the interaction is increased, the more likely we are to have tragic events.
So,
And that's cashless bail.
Yes.
That's in the Safety Act.
Yeah,
January of '23. That is, right now, they issue a warrant right away, but after, if January of '23, then that process will be part of cashless bail.
So Senator Joyce and Representative Haas, what is happening in the state now to possibly revisit 3653? And from your perspective, what are some of your plans that how can we revisit this with some of the changes?
Well, we've had some caucus that I'm a member of where we've had meetings with Kychek and the FOP, and there's a group of us that are looking and working with law enforcement to see what other areas, and talking to Jim Rowe and finding out locally some of the issues that aren't being addressed as of yet in trailer bills. But we ultimately have to get through a lot of what was in the original Safety Act and make sure that, number one, they are something that both the general public and police in general can agree on. At the beginning of this, to a person, everyone said that reform was necessary. But the conversations, and there was a lot of committee hearings, but we can see that there are continued difficulties in what the final version of the Safety Act was, and that's why we see trailer bills. And some of the trailer bills have passed one chamber and not the other, and have not made it to the governor's desk. But there are time constraints on some of these issues that have to be addressed before those times come. So we continue to work with all the entities that are involved, from my perspective.
So is there, what's your feeling about the possibility of seeing some of the changes that's happening that can really strengthen the bill for all parties?
Well, it's simple math. You got to get to 30 in the Senate and 60 in the House. And those are the conversations we're having with the various members on both sides of the aisle. And this has to be right from a community respect, period.
And I would ditto much of what the senator is saying, that those conversations are happening, but they need to happen at a higher level. I think that people have very strong feelings about a lot of the things that are in this bill, and I think we need a higher level of involvement from the police and the state's attorneys and folks from at those levels to be a part of this too. We know that the original bill didn't have that level of involvement. There was opposition from the state's attorneys, from the police unions, from Sheriff's Association, and that level of discussion needs to be enhanced.
So is there anything with the Sheriff Association? We got Chief Swinford and Chief Passwater here. State's Attorney Association, there's anything on the horizon to pull all those groups together soon before, we continue to have tragic incidents regarding citizens and police officers across
I
the
think,
state.
I think their associations are making attempts to have those discussions at their level. I think as Patrick mentioned too, as individual legislators, we're looking at what we can file that may have some impact on this too. We're having discussions with our local state's attorneys, sheriffs, to see what can we do at our level too that may have some impact. This bill is so huge that it does tie our hands even with some of that. So we're looking at having to look at some either major change with this bill or some repeal with it to have some impact on some of the things that need to maybe have some change on the local level too. So that's where we're really sitting with that.
Okay, from just as an individual, from my perspective, and I'm sort of rewinding things from the initial group that we started with back doing Ferguson in Missouri. So are there any, and I know Sheriff, you can help me, and along with Police Chief Swinford and Passwater, regarding the funding, additional funding to police departments regarding body cams. Just fortunately that Marlene and Officer Bailey had their body cams. So maybe, again, in a progressive manner, 2 years ago, it was about funding. Well, we can get that, but how can we do that? So now we have the city of Kankakee, most recent, approving body cams. You guys should be having them soon, correct?
We have them.
So just think about it. This time last year, Chief Barber and Anderson and Mason was sitting here talking about what we can address that particular situation with just the village of Bradley, and then they receiving body cams May, June,
I think
2021.
They got them, yeah.
Yeah, they
They've had
got
for a
them,
little
and,
while.
and so that just shows you the importance of body cams. So again, from a political standpoint, I can go back from a previous state's attorney was against body cams, or everyone saying, well, we don't necessarily need them, and we was hiding about funding. So you see how important it is, and again, it provides the state's attorney and other law enforcement agency that visual and the audio that just protects everybody across the board. So again, I know the state NAACP, we were having a meeting, and again, we cannot get Senator Sims in a meeting now, and so I don't know where he is, but I'm just saying election is coming up, and I think everyone needs, and it's a sad way to phrase this, but the most recent incident in this community should propel everyone across the state to say we need to revisit this particular bill where it's a even playing field and it serves everyone. We don't want individuals, victims, citizens, police officers to continue to lose lives, where this body initial is about the safety for everyone. So again, I don't know how we want to phrase that, but again, it's the update of the body cams, and Mayor, our public safety committee, everybody have to be across the board, but we have to be progressive in making policies that benefit this community in a positive way, meaning the criminal justice bill, the things that we have proposed, and again, Mayor, I want to get political on the previous administration, where we're talking about to get citizens more involved with our citizen review board. So those are the things, if we're going to move forward in this community, we're going to have to take our heads out of saying we got to be progressive, we got to have progressive policies that prevent law enforcement and the citizens of this county. And I think, Donna, go ahead.
So just to kind of tie on to what you're speaking of, is there policy in place regarding body cams as far as who sees them, when they see them, when are they, is there some protocol to this?
Before Jim answered, now, and previously, members of the NAACP have viewed body cams, footage, when we've been requested by different municipalities to help diffuse tension and things of that nature. I'm thinking there's somewhere, is it a 21-day policy or something like that? No?
No, those incidents in which civilians, so individuals not involved in the investigation or prosecution of the case, you're able to view that because there was no case pending in those incidents. There was
Right.
really no incident, right? So you're able to go in and view the body camera footage, not a problem. When a case has been charged, you then run into the territory where you don't want to compromise the investigation or prosecution of this case by releasing evidence to the public, or even potentially a small segment of the public that could taint potential jury, result in a change of venue. So we have to be really careful. I know a lot of people say, well, in
Laquan McDonald in Chicago.
Yep,
That
so-
was released.
So in
That's
police
exception to the rule.
police shooting cases, those videos are often released, and that is because when an officer who is a government employee discharges a weapon, the public has a public interest in knowing what happened there because it involved a public employee who presumably still remains on the payroll, who still remains in public service. When the roles are reversed, you have a completely different case you're talking about. Now you have a civilian who shot and killed a police officer. So under a scenario like that, again, not talking about any specific case, under a scenario like that, that public interest exception that applies in the Laquan McDonald case and so many of those other cases that the Attorney General has issued opinions on, that the courts issued opinions on when the Tribune sued for those videos. It's a completely different scenario there because now that public interest exception does not exist, but the sanctity of the prosecution and the investigation still does. I can't speak for what will happen, at the governor's level, at the Illinois State Police level, if people serve a FOIA upon those agencies. I can tell you if I receive a FOIA in my office and this case is still pending, we are not going to release that video. It's going to take a court's order to force me to release that video because I'm not going to compromise the prosecution of this case. I don't know what the Village of Bradley or any other of those entities would do. But I would just caution people, please don't ask to see that video or FOIA the video so that you can comment on it publicly or put that, if it is released by another agency, so that you can put those facts out into the public. That is not helpful to our efforts, law enforcement's efforts. And I understand people want to know what happened. People want to know what's on the video, what does the video show. There's a lot of bad information out there. There are some extremely ignorant people who have made shit up, quite frankly, and just put it out there. And I think they do it with the intention of stirring up emotions and problems. There was a former alderman in the city of Kankakee who I'm terribly disappointed in because he's one of those circulating those false rumors. But you can't do anything to stop ignorant people from acting ignorantly. And we see that on both sides of this issue. I've seen hateful stuff said by people who are pro-police as much as I've seen hateful stuff said by people who are anti-law enforcement. Those facts are going to come out, and the video is going to be shown when it needs to in a court of law. Any efforts by people to get that ahead of time, I would just caution it. Please don't do something in the interest of trying to address a problem that might not exist that ultimately compromises the case.
That is exactly the type of information that this group needs to make the correct decisions. And so thank you for that very descriptive explanation. So thank you.
Because this group was formed to respond to a situation where there's an officer-involved shooting.
Right.
An officer shoots someone in our community, discharges a weapon. There's a gap of confidence, perhaps, between the community and law enforcement. So all of you on that team are the ones that step up and basically say, we're vouching for this.
Right.
You can trust us. And they can trust you because they know you. But this is not that scenario.
And
There
that's
was-
where we are at
Yeah.
as well. That's where we are at as well. And just, even just to speak on the time frame, this was spoke of, implemented quite some time ago, but nothing was ever put to it because of COVID and just trying to get trainings. It took forever to get training set up. So it was only a couple of months ago that I was asked to be the spokesperson. At that meeting, we scheduled our first meeting, and so from there on out. So it has sit dormant because of COVID, because of getting training scheduled. So yes, we're just coming together to figure out what it is we do, but we all have that consensus. We never want to interfere in anything. So that's where we need that guidance. Okay, you guys got the reins on this, but don't do this. So I appreciate that. Thank
And
you.
sometimes, and there's things that a committee such as this committee can do without seeing the body cams, right? Perhaps when that, those conversations start to occur, people start to accuse law enforcement of doing something or vice versa, you can be the voices of reason that say, stay calm. Let's wait for the facts to come out. Let's wait for the evidence to come forward. You know, talk to your circles of influence. So there's a way for this committee to be involved in those situations if they decide to be, without having to see every bit of evidence that could compromise an investigation.
Hunter, I think you.
And I'm gonna play a devil's advocate, and Jim, you and I had a lot of discussions about this situation. You indicated that you've reviewed the body cam video over 60 times, and I can appreciate your thoroughness in that regard. And the kind of comments that you've made, the response team needs to hear that again this Saturday, I presume. And also, there's some competing interests here in terms of the public's right to know, and I think you've attempted to diffuse that. Have there been any FOIA requests for the videos at this point?
Now, my office has not received a FOIA request.
What about state police?
I have no idea.
Bradley?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't talk with them about that stuff. If
Yeah,
they've received one, you'd have to ask them.
And I'm kind of glad that we didn't gloss over the comments that Donna Sample made, who is a spokesperson for the response team, and Chief Swinsford's comments as well, too, because I was kind of twitching here in my seat, and hopefully we would be able to address it, because, you know, the response team are truth and fact finders. And all I'm saying is that, you know, people in the community might say, if indeed maybe the response team had seen some of the empirical data or information or the videos, it may have been able to diffuse some of the bullshit that's out there in the community. And you've shared with me all the allegations they've lodged towards you, as well as the police and so forth. And that's ridiculous. You know, I've heard some of that stuff as well too, and it doesn't make sense. All I'm saying is that, and I'm not trying to draw a parallel to what Mr. Pace mentioned in terms of myself, Paulette Crank, and Theodos have gone out to the various police departments to review allegations, although the situations are not quite similar. But I think we could have maybe done something in terms of diffusing the erroneous information that's been promulgated through social media. I know we can't stop some of that stuff. You know, some people may say that Jesus Christ was a demon. You know, you hear all kind of crazy stuff on the social media stream. But I was just thinking that there's been so much stuff out there regarding what the police did, beating up the pregnant lady and all that stuff. I don't believe that. And you diffused that by telling me, no, Steve, that's not true. I've heard other sources saying it's not true. All I'm saying is that maybe there could have been some opportunity for somebody on the response team. It could have been Donna Sample, who's a spokesperson, Theodos, president of the NAACP, me being the first vice president. I understand what you're saying in terms of compromising the integrity of the investigation. But I'm saying, you know, there's been so much stuff out there about the circumstances surrounding this situation, and I'm thinking, you know, maybe there could have been some other efforts to diffuse that by giving more empirical information and data and evidence whereby the response team could come out with a statement or something saying all those assertions that have been made are not correct or viable. That's all I'm
Breach.
saying.
Ownership of the videos, is it your office? Is it Bradley Police, State Police? I mean, who would they FOIA to get that? I'm not saying we are, but
Anyone in possession of the video could be FOIA'd for the video. Any government agency.
So again, you know, from a perspective of our members of the NAACP here in the county and the 42 branches across the state, and as I indicated to Senator Joyce and Representative Haas, State's Attorney Rowe, Sheriff Downing, Sheriff Swinford, and Passwater, I think we all have to become one to, and I clearly heard you, Senator, and Jackie. Someone is gonna, and sometimes Springfield moves a little slow, but I think we're gonna have to, take some large steps before another tragic incident happen, whether in East Moline or Cairo or something, to address some of these issues. You just heard the state's attorney, just heard our sheriff talking about trailer bills and things becoming in effect on January of 2023. So is that going to be positive to our community, negative to our community across the state? Do we want a similar incident to happen? And so we already know nationally, as Jim just indicated, this body, the response team, initially purpose was to deal with it in the reverse way with police shooting and to improve that relationship between law enforcement and our respective communities. So now, yes, Al. Yeah, sure.
The thing that guides our release of information from any government agency is the Freedom of Information request. But for some reason, the legislators saw fit to carve out this specific law about body cameras. And I think they did that because they realized the sensitive nature of what a body camera is going to see. You got a camera going on every police officer going into your house when you're having a fight with your wife, or a sexual assault case with a family member, or a police-involved shooting. You are right there, and they carved out very specific language that is an exception to the Freedom of Information request. And I think as this group, we're going to have to dig into that and figure out what that means to us. I think Jim explained it very well, but
He did.
The law is very specific on body camera requests, when you can and can't release it, even above and beyond what the Freedom of Information request says.
So again, we had a meeting on November 13th at ONU. There's a meeting this Friday, and so again, Chief Swinford and Basin, I think we need, Donna, Rhonda, we're going to have to sit down and look at, again, I know we worked out that training schedule, the curriculum on how we want to address the training for our individuals for the response team. So currently we have Doug, Rhonda, Donna, myself, Jackie. He was at the November 13th meeting. So I'm sort of lost track of I think we in the between 20 and 25 members of the response team that's been trained. So we pretty almost met our goal with that. So Donna, we can move forward with those members that we have to meet these purposes and the other aspect of what your vision with the group. But I think we need to maybe revisit and sometime retrain, because I think the first of 2021 when we was trained at KCC, was that early part of last year? Yeah. So again, I'm aware of at least 5 to 7 individuals that wants to participate and become a member of the response team. So, that's something that we need to look at.
So you're saying to err on the side of caution, and I think I'm hearing you say that too. Well, maybe Donna used to say it too, maybe wait and thorough. But, hindsight is 20/20, and I understand your concern and so forth regarding impugning the integrity of the investigation. So, we're gonna need people like you and Chief Police, to be with us, with the response team to make sure that we don't screw up.
So I can't tell you why.
No, I'm not saying that.
You guys have to have your own rules, your own procedures, your bylaws, what your mission is, when you're gonna activate, how you're going to activate. And ultimately, like the chief said, FOIA laws, the AG opinions, I'm not, all of that is going to govern when that big bill is released.
But you're cautioning us right now, and I heard you, loud and clear, in terms of walk softly. So I understand what you're saying.
And that's in every case. Every case is big. I know there's public interest in it, but I don't know that there's a public benefit.
You-
Information like that before it needs to be released.
Yeah.
Conversation that came to the group, is it possible? And so that's as far as this has gone. There is no FOIA, there is no request out there. And this response team is a group of community members who have absolutely no law enforcement background. We have no law background. So we need to have that guidance of saying, this is something that would be beneficial, this is something you need to step off of. And we are in the process of developing those guidelines for this group, but we're creating this brand new. We do not have, nobody's trailblazed this, that we can see what they've done. And so this is a brand new process for us. And we are all so very, very respectful of the law enforcement and the process that has to take place. Nobody wants to step over that. And it was our conversation through email this morning to say what would really be the outcome. If it's to stop a few people from saying negative things, people are going to say negative things. As long as it doesn't turn into something that begins to gain ground, they're going to speak, they're going to talk. So this group is working from no template, and we are putting together the recipe of what this would be without any of us having any experience in law enforcement. Yes, ma'am.
We did oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I just wanted to add to what Donna said real quick. We did a fantastic training on law enforcement procedure. I think it would be very beneficial to do training on investigative procedure and even court cases and how they're run, and come up with standard operating procedures for our internal, how we're going to look at cases, what we do. Because we are in such an infancy state, we don't know what you know, and I think you don't know what we don't know. And so...
All right, but we need to hurry up and
No
move.
problem. Last comment, Chairman. As a young alderman, and when, Gessner, you were on the fire department then, I was called in to take a look at autopsy pictures of a dead body beaten up with a hammer, because there was clamor in the community about what transpired. I was brought in and they showed me the dope that was confiscated on folks. And I could then diffuse some of the bullshit that was promulgated in the community. That's all I'm saying. We are fact finders, and that's all we want to do is ascertain the facts.
So with that, I've talked to the sheriff regarding his officers, deputies receiving proper counseling. Chief Passwater, any of your officers receiving any type of counseling? And you can also give an update on where you guys are with your body cams.
We have an organization that we belong to that came in that night. Some local ministers and priests, and then it's also outside organization. The one, Tim Perry, who spoke at the funeral service, he's headed this organization, so he came in. They've been with our officers on and off, so we pay for that service, and they came in that night. They were at the scene that night. They were at the hospital that night. So even though it was a Bradley incident, we called them in, and they came in and helped us out. So we have that. So that works out well for us. As to body cameras, we have them. We're waiting to get them installed. It takes a little bit of time. We have waiting for new squad cars. We haven't got those, so we don't want to put them in old squads. So that's kind of the deal going on. Talked to the guy today, and we think probably next week or something we might start slowly implementing them into the.
And then you also just brought on 2-3 new officers also, right? How many?
Yeah, we just hired 4 more. So this year we've hired 8.
Okay.
But we're going to hire probably 6 more, and we'll probably have to retest again. So we just tested. I mean, that's certainly one of the problems that everybody's encountering is that there's just not enough police officers to go around, and the competition to get them is really strong. So that's one thing. I will say something else. I understand Steve talk about the truth seekers, but I didn't understand this organization to be that, because I thought what that makes it look like is that the police aren't telling the truth, and we come in and we're going to look at these videos, and then we're going to be the decision makers, or this organization's going to be the decision makers of whether it was good or bad or not. No, but I know, Steve, but when you say that, it does seem like that way, but so I think the problem, a lot of it is so she just said they don't have any training in it. So if you don't have any training in it, to even make a comment on it would be unethical, right? So
Yeah,
I think
but that was, I'm just, let me correct you. That's possibly dealing with this particular incident. On the flip side, where I've actually viewed videos before, it was also in a different, the scenario was totally different, where we actually help. I can say, well, like let's say Chief Phelps, where there was some possibly tension because of a traffic stop. So we're talking, a little different.
I understand
but
that.
in
I'm
that
just saying,
incident, I'm actually
if somebody-
viewing and hearing the officer engage with the citizen, okay? And so then if it comes out, I'm saying, now, I looked at the video. Officer Pace did not do what is being alleged in that particular incident. This one, you had the state's attorney in the shooting death of one officer and another one that's still fighting for his life. So there's a whole different scenario.
Yeah,
of
I
this,
get
but
that.
yeah.
I'm just wondering if you guys put out a statement. Most of these people don't know who you guys are either. So if the state's attorney's put out a statement saying what happened, the sheriff's in there, and the Bradley police chief's all saying it, if they don't believe all those guys, why? I can't see them believing this.
And
Community members.
I
So
hear you.
I'm
with
like,
that.
And I guess, was there any rebuttal to whoever put that information out, that somebody would have stepped up from that organization, say, don't put misinformation out, just wait until we get all the facts in? Because that's what should have happened, whoever was putting that information out on there.
Well, I mean, we're
So
going
I don't
back
know who
with
they
the
were,
state's
but-
attorney said the previous alderman, if it's something erroneous, sometimes you just let that person, because if you interact, sometimes you fuel the fire.
Right.
So
I
it's
get
not
that, yeah.
like where they went in the community, but it was an alleged statement. So now individuals that I know that I can have a conversation with, I can pick up the phone and say, no, that's not true. Other individuals were seeking, because actually we had individuals, Lori, correct me, came to the NAACP and we said, no, we're not going to even address that.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what should be done. I
Right.
mean, obviously, if the state's attorney's saying this, I mean, this group is all designed about trust, and I always hear that every time. Either you trust us or you don't. So,
Right.
if the Bradley police chief said this happened, then that happened, and that's what everybody's got to go with. Because I don't know if he's ever lied. I mean, it'd be different if you guys said, "Hey, we're always lying." But the idea is that we're saying this happened. We can't release all the information on this information all the time. We can only put out parts of it. But I think that you guys got to support us at that point.
Absolutely.
Saying, we don't have all the information, but we know this department and this chief and his officers are not going to put out false information. And I'm not asking for blind support. You guys can, but I'm asking for that if we put it out, like the Bradley chief put out and the state's attorney put out, that it's all going to come out anyway, so why would they lie about it? So that's what I'm saying.
You're right, Chief Passwater, but there's been at least 5 incidents where I've viewed body cams with Chief Phelps and before Phelps. Joe. No. No, Phelps is in Bourbonnais, and Johnston and Barber in Bradley, where they actually called us in to view it because of what was probably brewing, which has been a negative tension in those respective communities. So that's why. So we was actually called in, not that we requested for you, but was called in to do that, to address any possible tension. No different than Kincaid or after Kincaid. Who was that? Ringy. Cosman said here, and so where they would pick up the phone, such and happened at the corner of Chicago and Oak Street. You know, that means, so if I get that call, I can tell what I heard, what happened at Chicago and Oak Street. That particular.
I'm
so,
just concerned because
yeah.
we're going to have a lot of video. I mean, this thing's running all the time for
Right.
all these officers. That every time it gets questioned, that we got to call a group up and say, "You guys got to come in because they aren't going to believe us or whatever else." And then
No, hold it, Chief. Hold it, Chief.
I'm just,
I'm not.
what I'm just
that's-
saying is that. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. But they can watch the video. In fact, we had
Right.
the other day a guy questioned what was on the video in car. I made a copy and delivered right to his house. Had the officer deliver it to his house
Right.
and say,
Well,
"There you are." So
Personally, I don't want to
Yeah.
see the video of the incident myself as an individual. I don't want to see it. If I'm reading in the paper, I'm on the radio, I can pick up the phone and call the state's attorney. So we can let all that sort of work out itself. But you're right. That's why this group, and it's the flip side. When this group initially happened with Alderman O'Brien, Phelps, myself, Mason, Chief Swinford on the grassroots level, when we was at the basement trying to build this up, and it is because where we are in 2022, if we go back to Ferguson, there has been an improvement in this particular county and community where there is the trust. Again, I guarantee you at 12/11, at the other 101 counties, the NAACP is not meeting with the state senator, a state rep, their sheriff, police chief.
I'm
those are
just saying.
things-
I think it's a good idea. It's
Right.
great. I'm just concerned about the being shown like this video here, or even officer involved shooting video that people who watch it don't have any expert advice on what they're putting out, and that they don't really have training in it, so they're going to put out a statement on it. We think it's good, we think it's bad, or something. That's what my concern is.
Right.
What kind of statements develop to put out on that, because even though we watch it 10 times, we may see something different. So that's what my concern is. If something happens that who's going to put out a statement, and if there's really a statement needs to be put out without
Absolutely.
having really, it takes a lot of training.
And I see you, Donna, but we're going to move on because normally this meeting is to an hour and we're a little over. But again, you heard Rhonda, you heard Donna, and that is the piece where we want to make sure that we meet those concerns just from you, that they are trained. And that's why we got Andy. That's why Al is so far involved. That's why Lieutenant Mason is so involved in the training of these respective individuals. Sheriff Curtis, Mayor Curtis, anything from you? Any comment?
Got it all covered.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
Theonis, if I
yeah.
could, just real quick. First of all, I want to thank Senator Joyce and Representative Haas for coming. You guys are invited anytime.
Next meeting, March 9th.
March 9th. You're always welcome, so that you can hear straight from everybody in this room the needs of our community. And I will give you just a quick update on our body cams, and Chief Passwater mentioned it. Ours have been in use since about August when we started putting them into use, and we did the same thing. I mean, we started out slow, one officer at a time. To this day, and I probably shouldn't say this, and Chief McCabe might come over the table at me when I say this, but I don't believe that we have had a request to see any body camera footage at this point. All right? So,
I think in my defense, because the FOIA law was written by a media attorney, one of my big concerns is they never asked practitioners like ourselves that have 600 some inmates what's going to happen, and obviously the in-car cameras are huge, and when those start getting out there, we'll have an influx. We'll need a media person to manipulate those tapes and take out juveniles and the things that can't be in them, so.
but they have been, and as I said before we got them, and I know that we've been critical of 3653, but it's not all bad. I mean, it was a money issue more than anything with body cameras for a lot of agencies, but I have said from day one that body cameras will protect police 99.9% of the time. So we're glad we have them right now, and to a person in our department, are glad we have them right now. So, I mean, there are some good things that have come out of 3653. And as far as our hiring, Chief McCabe mentioned he is retiring effective this Friday. With his salary, we'll be able to hire about 5 or 6 guys. No, we have 2 others who have retired, so we will replace those with 3, and we do have an active list right now, so we intend to do that. So, but again, thank you to Senator Joyce and Representative Haas for being here. So we have a motion from Lori Gadbois. Yes.
Thank you. Just a reminder, as President Pace said, our next meeting is March 9th, 12 noon here at the Sheriff's Complex. Thank you very much for that. And with that, I do make a motion to close the meeting.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.